Sup, freaks? It's your boy Marty here to introduce this rip of TFTC. Thank you for joining us. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. If you catch us on podcast apps, make sure you subscribe there. Give us a rating, a review. Go to tftc.io as well. Become a member of the site. Join the conversation. Truth for the commoner, trying to get you the high signal content in a world gone mad. This rip was brought to you by our good friends at River. River's here to make it as easy as possible for you to buy Bitcoin and then take it into self-custody. Go to river.com/TFTC, set up an account today, and you'll get $5 of Bitcoin after you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin on River. You can dollar cost average into Bitcoin with no fees. If you're just buying one off, River has the best fees in the industry. They back all their Bitcoin reserves 1-to-1 in multi-sig cold storage. They highly recommend that you take self-custody. They just introduced limits. So if you want to set a limit order below or above the current Bitcoin price, River makes that extremely easy as well. They also have real customer support. You can pick up the phone and call them if you have any questions about your experience on River. So go to river.com/TFTC, set up an account today. Enjoy this rip. Well, we can't include it because we weren't recording. Ben Hart, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marty.
We were just having
great
a pre.
Here.
It's great to have you. I mean, it's been I'm sure it's been an insane couple of weeks for you.
It has. Yeah. Yep.
Getting Elon is a mainstay in your replies now.
Right. He's replied to 2 of my posts on this whole dust up with my daughter. I don't know if you want me to go into that, but is that something you want me to go into a little bit?
If you don't, it depends if you're comfortable, and I don't want you to feel forced.
Yeah, I'm just going to. So what happened was, I woke up at 6 a.m., as I usually do, pour myself a cup of coffee, get ready to do some work, some writing, because I actually, I'm in the advertising business. That's my profession. And so I open up my laptop computer and I go online and I'm just greeted with an avalanche of just really negative comments about me. You're a deadbeat dad, you abandoned your family and all this stuff. And actually those are the best comments that kind of went down from there. And it was thousands of these comments, and I'm wondering what the heck is going on here. And so after a few minutes of investigation, I find out that my daughter, who is a writer out in Hollywood, she's writing a show or helping to write a show for NBC Peacock Streaming. She graduated from college from Northwestern University in 2021. And so she had posted this video on me, and the first part of the video was actually very funny. She said, and it was about sort of family trauma. That was the theme. And her trauma was that her dad, in his 50s, abandoned or in his 40s, in his 50s, abandoned the family to pursue breakdancing, which is a kind of a funny storyline. Wasn't true, but it was a funny storyline. But during the course of the video, she said I wasn't paying medical bills and implied that I was a deadbeat dad. And so the comments, she didn't actually say I was a deadbeat dad, but that's what the commenters all interpreted that way. So, and of course, I wasn't a deadbeat dad. I was in the advertising business. I had paid, we got divorced. I got divorced from her mom in 2005, and I paid the family millions of dollars in alimony and child support, and put $600,000 or so into a college fund. And I just lived down the street, literally just lived a mile and a half or so down the street, sidewalks all the way, easy walk or bike ride if they chose to do that. And I saw the kids all the time. So the video wasn't correct. So I get in touch with Maddie, and I say, look, Maddie, I did like a lot of this video. The storyline was funny, how Dad left my family to pursue breakdancing. But I said, I don't really care about that, but I do care about the deadbeat dad implication. So what I'd like you to do is take this video down and correct it. It can be just as funny without that. And she refused to do that because by that time her video had gone viral. It had gotten 7 million views on TikTok alone, and was just basically all over the internet, all over YouTube and so forth. And so I said, okay, I'm going to have to make a response video. I said to myself, I have to make a response video to this, very gentle. And the video I came out with was very gentle. It just corrected those few inaccuracies. And it was very pro-Maddie. And it even said, I love the video. I love 98% of her video. I just didn't like the implication that I was a deadbeat dad. So at first the video just had like a couple hundred views, and I pointed out to Maddie, and Maddie actually liked the video. She texted back, haha, that was funny. And I said, what I'd like you to do, if you're not going to take down your video and correct it, at least put my video up on your feed so that your viewers can see it, because you've got millions of viewers, and I'd like them to see this video. But she declined to do that, and so then my video went viral. Within 12 hours, I think it had 1 million views on X, then 5 million views, then 10 million views, on up to 30 million views. And I think Elon weighed in with a comment that said, "You're awesome," and and then that was around when it had hit 10 million views, I think, and then that propelled it, of course, to 33 million views. And then I started getting really angry messages from her mom, from my ex-wife, just screed, "Take your video down, take your video down." And I said, well, I'll take it down if Maddie takes her video down. Her video is still up, so I need to have my video up, which corrects the record, which at least corrects the record. Then she went up with a much more negative video, which was filled with more inaccuracies. And so I came back with a follow-up video to that, which just was basically home movies, videos that I had taken when they were growing up as kids, where we were going on vacations together, going to the beach, going to water parks, skiing, going to a Yellowstone park, and just on and on. And just, it was kind of the videos were kind of a chronicle of her life and the life of my kids with me. And it showed them at every different stage of life: graduation, graduation from middle school, graduation from high school, graduation from college, fun dinners out. In fact, we all had a Christmas dinner together just this last Christmas, a few weeks ago, and everybody's sitting around the table. I have photos of that, of course, and everybody's smiling and just very happy. So as far as I was concerned, I had a tremendous relationship with my daughter, with Maddie, the one who is working in Hollywood. And I'll just go. I have to find. Okay, so we're texting back and forth all the time. Our conversations, literally, even though we disagree on politics, we actually had a very good relationship, and so the conversations are like this. They just go and go and go. And she's telling me about what's happening in her day, and how she's her channel is really taking off, and she's created some merch, some T-shirts that people can buy, and so on. And she sends me photos of that, and that's cool. And I give her tips on her videos, and she has a job there at NBC Peacock streaming, but as a side hustle, she's building a kind of a social media presence. And she's making a little bit of money of that, and she likes doing it, and I love the fact that she's doing it. I think it's awesome what she's doing, even though I don't agree with the content of the videos a lot of times. But that's basically what happened. And so then the second video also got a couple million views, maybe 3 million views on X, and everybody was doing podcasts on it and reacting to it on YouTube and on TikTok and everywhere. And so basically, it seemed like everybody in America was talking about this. Meanwhile, some people questioned, well, should I have even put up a video at all? And I'm in the advertising business. I built an ad agency, and I have clients, and a lot of my clients had seen her initial video. So I did need to correct the record and say, well, this is, I think her video is funny and it's kind of cool, but I do need to correct these inaccuracies. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to wonder, why are we doing business with this guy if he's, abandoned his family for breakdancing, and he's a deadbeat dad and isn't paying these bills. And even when she was launching off, she graduated from college in 2021, I guess May of 2021, and she needed kind of startup money to get out to LA and get an apartment out there. And so I gave her $5,000 in kind of adulthood startup money, and co-signed a lease on her apartment. And I was paying a lot of her medical costs because she didn't have insurance. And so I was definitely paying out a lot, and also helped her buy a car, a used Ford Fiesta. Gave her $2,500 for that. Her mom also kicked in $2,500, and I think Maddie kicked in some money, and so used car, and so she could drive out to LA. And then there was a writer's strike. There was the Hollywood writer's strike, and so she was laid off temporarily for that. Well, really for about 6 months. And she needed some money weekly just so she could stay in her apartment. Otherwise, she said she was going to have to come home and live with her mom until the strike ended. So could I help out with some money? So I gave her $250 a week. I I guess for about 10 weeks, and then she got a job at Netflix, which was not affected by the writer's strike for some reason. And then she worked there until the writer's strike ended, and then she got her old job back at Peacock Streaming, working on the show that she was working on. So, you my dad, let's see, when I graduated from college, my dad he was done at that point. I didn't get a penny. And I think that's how it was for every kid, or most kids back in those days. The parents just threw the kid into the deep end of the swimming pool and see if they could make it. I mean, that was basically the attitude. And so then I took a bus to Washington, D.C., and maybe a bus and a train, and got down there with the few dollars I had and got a job. And I think that's how most people did. I rented a room for $135 a month in a really bad area of Washington, D.C., and just kind of work up that way. And that's, I think, how. But the apartments today, I don't know what Maddie's paying for her place, but I think it's close to $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month. So that definitely wasn't my life coming out of school, and I don't think it's most people's lives.
No, well, I mean, there's many roads to go down here, and I think for the context of this conversation,
there's so many roads, yeah.
Around Bitcoin, so there's two things. Like, I'm really interested to get your thoughts, having been in the advertising industry for many decades, like the emergence of social media and this sort of influencer-driven marketing and the concerted effort to create viral videos to build an audience and then get brands to sponsor you so that you can make some money off of this. Like, what are the incentives like there, and has it corrupted media and advertising at all, or is it good? Is it a double-edged sword?
Well, one of my mantras is, and I bought a little bit of Ethereum at first, and kind of I'm an investor, a tech investor. I invest in technology, and generally the approach is you invest in the two leaders and you see which one wins. You invest in Google and Yahoo. You don't just invest in Google, you just see, and then one emerges. Or, you invest in MySpace and Facebook and see which one emerges. And so my approach was, okay, maybe do 2/3 in Bitcoin because it's the leader, and maybe 1/3 in Ethereum. But the more I studied it, and one of the reasons I wrote this book, Bitcoin, A Beginner's Guide, let me just pump my book real quick. Yep. Bitcoin, A Beginner's Guide is, I really wanted to say why Bitcoin was different from all the other cryptos, because Bitcoin is the King Kong of crypto, but really it's the King Kong even more of decentralized digital money. And I think, as you know, Marty, Bitcoin is 95% of the market in the decentralized digital money space. It's really the only digital money, and all the other projects are centralized. I mean, there's a few that maybe not, Litecoin and a few other cryptos that are very small, maybe Monero, I don't know. But they're very small networks, and the smaller the network, the more vulnerable it is to attack. So Bitcoin, the bigger it gets, the more secure it gets. China tried to outlaw Bitcoin in 2021, outlawed Bitcoin mining, outlawed Bitcoin transactions, and all the miners left China, all the miners in China. And at that time, China was 60% of the Bitcoin mining was being done in China, and then it went down to 0. And the hash rate, the compute power, the hash rate for the Bitcoin network dropped a lot. But then it came back really quite quickly as these Chinese miners, they moved out of China. They took their rigs and they reset up their operations in places like Kazakhstan and the United States and many other places, Afghanistan and so on, Africa, wherever, Middle East, wherever they could find some place to do mining. And so the hash rate came back, and so that told me that Bitcoin is basically indestructible, because if China, with 1.2 billion people, and it's a totalitarian regime, if China cannot kill Bitcoin, Bitcoin can't be killed. And then Bitcoin mining came back in China. I think 20% or so of the Bitcoin mining in the world is now being done in China. So the Chinese government, the China regime, gave up on cracking down on Bitcoin because it was just a waste of effort for the regime. So it just decided to, okay, I guess we'll allow it. we won't crack down on it anymore. And so that was also very persuasive to me, that Bitcoin is probably indestructible at this point.
Mm-hmm. And that makes it a secure investment. But it seems like, considering your history, I think maybe we should talk about what we were discussing before we hit record, is the fact that you helped launch the Dartmouth Review back when you were in college in 19 82 or 80, 1980.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
graduated in 82.
1980, graduated in 82, right. Yeah. Yeah, I started me and a small group of people, and some names you might have heard of were part of this effort. Laura Ingraham, she's the
Mm-hmm.
host on Fox News. She was part of this. She was like 4 or 5 years younger than me. So she came. But anyway, we started this paper, a conservative right of center, I would say conservative libertarian, or just people interested in freedom. We started this paper, which was kind of a right of center National Lampoon. There was a lot of humor in it. Like half the paper was kind of humor, and the other parts were investigative reporting about what was happening on campus. And one of my roles, I was the president and publisher of the paper, and there were four others, five others, I think, that were co-founders. I wanted the paper to be only about Dartmouth, what was happening on the Dartmouth campus, because nobody cares about what a 20-year-old thinks about world events. But we were reporting on what was going on campus. And we were able to get a hold of the alumni mailing list. Well, first we applied for funding, to be subsidized by the college, and they turned us down, even though they're subsidizing every other group, but just not us. And so we got a hold of the alumni directory, and we key punched it in, had it key punched into a computer database. And of course, computers back then were very primitive, but we got it in, and we did a mailing out to 45,000 Dartmouth alumni, and asking for support for the paper. And like I think $100,000 came in, which is a lot of money. I'd never seen that much money before in my life. So, and that really launched the paper, and we were able to buy offices, and we'd put out a few issues by then. And the college really reacted negatively. They really tried to crack down on the paper, tried to put the paper out of business. They threatened us with lawsuits, and we were in court. And they tried to prevent. They used the campus police to prevent distribution of the paper on the campus. And of course, that actually just made the paper a lot more popular. People wanted to get their hands on it. It's like I didn't get my issue of the paper because the police picked it up, the campus police. And so we would slide the paper under people's. We'd go around to each dorm door, the door of each dorm room, and we slide the paper under it. But sometimes you couldn't slide paper under the door, so the campus police would come along and pick it up. And then we also left the paper at local stores that supported us. And the paper was also supported by advertising. We went around to the stores and asked for advertising, and the ones that liked us would advertise. And they would also stack up the paper, like at the Dartmouth bookstore. The Dartmouth bookstore was run by a conservative entrepreneur type, and he loved the Dartmouth Review, and he always advertised. And he always had the paper stacked up there at the Dartmouth bookstore. So we were definitely able to get the paper out. The paper was the first student conservative paper or I'd say the most successful, and the first. It's still publishing today, by the way. It's still publishing, 40 years later. And so it just became kind of I think maybe 150 other papers, conservative or right-leaning, freedom-leaning papers, sprang up on campuses kind of in the wake of the Dartmouth Review. And so it really became a phenomenon. Like 60 Minutes did a piece on us, which actually was surprisingly positive. I think they came in, trying to present us as a bunch of racists or something like that. But once they got talking to us, they saw, hey, that was pretty cool. And it was a pretty that was actually a pretty balanced piece on 60 Minutes. And it was just a media kind of sensation back then. And I then wrote a book called Poisoned Ivy my senior year at Dartmouth, just on this totalitarian mindset that was developing on the liberal side. Liberals used to be for freedom. You had the free speech movement at the Berkeley campus during the Vietnam War protests, against the draft. So they were for free speech. The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, for civil liberties, for free speech. So in the 60s and the 70s, early 70s, the liberals, the left side, was all about freedom, all about civil liberties. But what I point out in my book in Poison Ivy is that when they actually get in charge of something, they aren't for freedom anymore. They don't want to have conservative speakers on the campus or freedom-oriented speakers on the campus. They'll be like, they'll shout you down. And you've seen that, of course. And it's of course, intensified a lot more now. At Dartmouth, the student body was pretty conservative. We did a poll of students back then, and I think 60% were for Reagan. Of course, the college professors were very much on the left. The college professors, they had a faculty meeting, and they voted I think it was 190 to 5, to condemn the election of Ronald Reagan. So there was that. But the book points out that really the origins of this totalitarian mindset is this what I call victims studies departments that were rising up on the campuses, particularly the Ivy League campuses at that time, or the elite colleges, like women's studies, Black studies, Native American studies, gay and lesbian studies, and all these groups. And at that time, these departments were very small, maybe a few professors, but they were very vocal, and they would be involved in organizing these protests and so forth. And so I noticed that this group, they would get professors fired for saying the wrong thing. If you had the wrong views, you could not be a woman and not be a feminist and get a job in the women's studies department. Margaret Thatcher would not be respected by the women's studies department, even though she was a just tremendously influential and tremendous leader, a tremendous woman, female leader. They should be proud of that. But so I noticed that it's not women's studies, it's just left-wing studies. It's just left-wing indoctrination. And same with all these other, what I would call victim studies departments. And of course, as time went on, they became more and more powerful, and we see how powerful they are today. These giant corporations, Fortune 500 corporations, in response to this, have had to set up entire departments, divisions that do nothing but, enforce this, what is it, diversity, equity, and inclusion, this kind of woke ideology. And so, that's what's happening. And of course, Google and these big tech companies, Google, Microsoft, and so forth, their biggest customers, the government. And the CIA was basically started by, Google was basically launched by the CIA. Yeah, it was launched on its own with venture capital and so forth, but the CIA was the biggest customer of Google, and is the biggest customer of Microsoft and Amazon. And so really what you have emerging now is this big tech partnership with government, with big government, and they want to put a lid on free speech, because free speech is basically, civilization survives when we have free speech. And that's why they hate Elon Musk so much, because what Elon Musk did was, with his purchase of Twitter, now X, for $44 billion, he put his money where his mouth was. He really believes in freedom. And he provided a rather large, a very large platform where free speech is actually allowed. And that's why they're coming after him so hard. With Biden administration, I think, has 8 investigations of Elon Musk underway now, some of them criminal investigations, and almost all of these started as a result of his purchase of Twitter, because they cannot let the truth out. If you let the truth out, they're kind of done. So that's basically it. So I kind of went from Dartmouth Review, and my book really is the first book to talk about this woke mind virus, which is the totalitarian mindset on the left. They're no longer for freedom. And I called it the ethos. That's what I called it the ethos. I didn't call it woke. That wasn't a term that existed. But I developed this term, the ethos, or maybe I just thought it was kind of a cool term, because it's not just about your political views. It's not just about who you vote for, whether you're for Biden or you're for Trump or you're for RFK Jr. or somebody else. It's not about your political affiliation. So that's, of course, part of it. You have to think exactly right, and if you make even a slight slip up, you use the wrong word. Is it supposed to be black people? Is it supposed to be African American people? Is it supposed to be people of color? And of course, these terms change all the time. So if you use an outmoded term, you're a racist or something like that. And so they really enforce these speech codes, and it's really Orwellian, because when you control the language and when you enforce speech codes, what you're really doing is brainwashing people, because that has an impact on your thinking. How you speak impacts how you think, because when you speak, it's really just an expression of what you're thinking. And if they can just control speech with these speech codes, then they can really shape the country, because most people, they don't really think for themselves. They're not critical thinkers. They kind of just believe what the government says, or they just believe what CNN says. And and by the way, a great follow, Marty, is a guy named Mike Benz, and he talks about how these big media companies are basically CIA operations. And I didn't fully appreciate this until I started following Benz. I kind of suspected it. But that's been going on since, the 1950s, or really coming out of World War II, when the CIA, the intelligence agencies, a big part of what the intelligence does is control narratives. And they were doing this as offensive weapons against our military enemies. Whether it was Hitler in that time, or communism and so forth. So in some ways, it was good. We kind of liked it back then that the CIA was destabilizing regimes that we didn't like with propaganda, and by controlling the narrative. But back then, there were only really three major TV networks: CBS, ABC, NBC, and so they could really dictate what people were thinking. And of course, during World War II, the media was very patriotic, right? So we don't mind that. Great, patriotism. But then what's happened recently, and Mike Benz really chronicles this tremendously, is they've turned the intelligence agencies against us, against the American people, and they're trying to tamp down any kind of alternative viewpoint. And they are, if there's a reason why the talking points on the major media networks are all identical. I mean, every day it's like just a set of talking points. It's just they just repeat the same talking points. There's no original thought, and that is the propaganda that's coming directly from the intelligence agencies. I mean, it's not only the intelligence agencies, but it's being controlled largely by that, and of course, it's filtered through the political parties and so forth. So that's what's happening. And Bitcoin, and I say that Bitcoin is really one of the off ramps from that, because whoever controls your money controls you. So Bitcoin is an escape from that. Bitcoin is not governed or controlled by humans. Humans are prone to corruption, and they want power, and so Bitcoin is your off ramp from that. And I'm not all the way like Max Kaiser, who thinks that Bitcoin is going to just collapse government, collapse the need for government, and everything's going to be all fiat currency is going to be sucked into Bitcoin. I don't think that. I don't really want that to happen. I want the United States to still exist. I want to have a secure border. I want to have an honest money. Now, I think fiat currency is fine for buying your cup of coffee, your groceries, and people will probably still continue to do that. But Bitcoin allows people to vote with their feet. Some people have called it digital gold. So if all hell breaks loose here and we become a totalitarian dictatorship, you can carry your wealth in your pocket and go somewhere else. You can vote with your feet. And so that's what Bitcoin does. And I think, the other pillar of the hope for freedom survival is Elon Musk, because he's the richest man in the world, and he now gets it. He voted Democrat all of his life, and then he kind of woke up and saw that hey, wait a minute, these people are not for freedom at all. These people are for totalitarianism, a high-tech kind of feudalistic totalitarianism, push-button totalitarianism. I think that Edward Snowden, I think, coined that phrase, or turnkey totalitarianism, and that's what big tech is. They can disappear you with a push of a button in terms of social media and your internet presence. So Bitcoin pushes back against that, but Elon, with his purchase of X, also pushes back against that. And so I feel like I have a lot of hope, because I didn't have much hope really before Elon purchased Twitter and turned it into X. Because Bitcoin is cool. You do need a sound money, and if government controls your money, they can control you. And of course, they're coming out with programmable money, right? CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. China's rolling this out in China, where they can turn off your money, or they can program your money so that you can only buy certain things, can't buy other things. They could turn off your money if they don't like what you're saying. Bitcoin is the safeguard from that. I call it the Second Amendment for your money.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful and potent.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. Mike Benz, what he's done to eliminate what's going on behind the scenes of the censorship industrial complex is incredible. We had him on the show, I think, 3 months ago. It was an incredible discussion, and it is crazy. You go back, this goes all the way back to the 50s or 60s with Operation Mockingbird.
Yep.
Where the CIA was directly embedding themselves with the media agencies to spread these narratives and propagandize the American people. And it's like, whether it's you writing about the ethos in the 80s, the CIA via Operation Mockingbird sort of propagandizing everybody, it's really metastasized to a boiling point, I think.
Yep, and the education system. The education system, if it's of course part of that, and part of the root of the conflict, I think, with my daughter, which I don't think I have a conflict with my daughter. I think we'll we'll get back together and smooth things over. But I do think she was brainwashed in large part by her school, by the schools she attended, particularly Northwestern University. I saw a real kind of change there.
I went to
But the
college in
educate.
Chicago too. It was pretty
Oh, okay.
prevalent throughout the whole city.
Yeah, it's just well, a lot of this started with Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers, I don't know, do people know? I think Bill Ayers was the founder and was the founder of the Weather Underground, which was a terrorist
Hmm.
group in the
Yeah,
1960s.
yeah. Jesse
And they,
Bodine
yeah,
was
all
the.
those people, Bernadette, was it Bernadette Dorn, I think his wife, and they literally bombed a police station. They bombed this, I think, the CIA and some other government facilities. No one was killed, but they were bombing things, and they were a violent group. And he never served time in prison because he got off on a technicality because of illegal wiretaps, I guess, by the FBI, or at least that's what it was ruled. So they basically let him off in a technicality or some kind of probation or something. So then he became a professor, a university professor, this former terrorist. I mean, and he admits all this in his book. So I'm not saying anything that would be libelous. But he then started a project in Chicago to take over the public schools and to write the curriculum. And I think he got a $49 million grant from the Annenberg Foundation, and he was very close with Obama. There were community organizers together, and he basically set the blueprint for the Chicago public school systems. And we see we see how well that has worked out. That's what we have today. That's basically the Bill Ayers public school model. So he's the architect of that, and then that, of course, became nationwide because they know that the left used to talk in the 60s a lot about the long march through the institutions, and long march refers to Mao Zedong's long march in China to take over China. And so they wanted to do the long march through the institutions. So Bill Ayers and his people were part of that. And so he started in Chicago with Obama, and then he launched or helped launch Obama's political career out of his living room when he put up Obama, or they worked together to put Obama up for the Illinois State Senate, and then, the rest is history. Obama was a very charismatic, articulate character, became a U.S. senator, and then president. So that's it. But the focus, the point there is that Bill Ayers understood that if he could take over the education system, if he could control the curriculum, they could eventually control the country, because if they can capture the minds of young kids and brainwash them, you've got the future of the country. And that's what they mean by the long march through the institutions. So it kind of started in these these victim studies departments and at the elite colleges in the 1970s, in the late 1970s. And then it kind of, then it spread among the universities. And then eventually it trickled down to the public school system, who followed the Bill Ayers model. So, and then, of course, the teachers' unions the teachers' unions really control the public schools. And, I say in one of my videos, in my dust up with my daughter there, that really parents should not send their kids to school at all, certainly not send their kids to an elite college. It's a complete waste of time and money now. Nothing of value is learned there. Of course, exceptions would be for things like engineering, or maybe you want to become a doctor or something like that. But for the most part, very marketable skills can be learned, just studying online, taking the courses you need at a local community college, and not wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars and all this time going to school and essentially getting brainwashed and really learning nothing of value, nothing, no marketable skills that will actually help you be successful in life. And I actually wrote another book. I'm not trying to pump my book, but I wrote another book titled Win Life, and it's aimed at kids and early young adults. Success skills schools don't teach. So basically, the success skills can be learned on your own. Just go online, go take local community college courses, and homeschool your kids. Don't let your kids go to the public schools. And Elon Musk has said this many times recently. He said that basically the schools are just a colossal waste of time and money, and that you'd just be better off learning the skills on your own. Everything you need to succeed can be learned online, or almost everything. And the things that can't be learned online, do it at community college.
Yeah, I don't want to pump my horn too much here, but I went to school in Chicago. Chicago was a fun city. We did not have an attendance policy at DePaul University, and so I would skip class and just teach myself the curriculum on Khan Academy and then go.
Right.
I was setting the curve on some of the tests in my economics classes, and it was just
Oh,
from
that's
teaching
awesome.
myself. And
Yeah.
you don't need it. And that's like the one thing I wonder too, with this long march that's been decades in the making. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident, because I do think the pendulum is beginning to swing back in our direction as the insanity and the chaos of the results of the long march begin to collapse in and of themselves. Like, they started
Yep.
this long march back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s.
Hmm.
Did not foresee the emergence of the internet age and communications technology, social media, and the ability to teach yourself and access information online. And so it's sort of eroding their attempts to finish this
Yep.
long march. Is like right when
Absolutely.
they're towards the end, it's like, oh, we don't need you guys anymore. We don't need to go to university to get brainwashed. I can go to the
Yep.
University of Salcon and learn all these really
Absolutely.
any subject I want to.
I mean, Harvard's basically become a laughingstock, right? With this Claudine Gay plagiarism, president of Harvard plagiarizing, and she's clearly a affirmative action hire. She's president of the most prestigious college in the world, really. And Harvard's a laughingstock. I mean, there's just no. It's just a waste of money and time to go to a place like that. It's not that prestigious anymore. It's just because of all this, the education has become so corrupted, the curriculum and so forth. Now, obviously, if you go into medical school, it's great to go to Harvard Medical School. That would be fantastic. But for most students, I think Harvard is a complete waste of time and money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think more people are starting to realize that.
Yep.
Gen Z, that's the thing too, is I've noticed, because I've got friends who have younger brothers and sisters who are Gen Z, and there seems to be a demarcation within that generation where some
Yeah.
realize that things are really screwed up and are sort of rebelling against the attempted brainwashing that they're subjected to, and then the other half has been completely co-opted and is completely woke and believes the world's gonna end.
I do see a huge change among young people. These videos that responding to my daughter, a lot of young people are really resonating with it, and you can see that they have been in a way red pilled to reality, and a lot of them, I think this whole inflation thing, the money printing thing, and the problem that Bitcoin solves, which is the fiat money printing press, which is really unlimited taxation. It's infinite taxation. It's, as you know, the dollar has lost 98.5% of its value since 1971, when it went off the gold standard, when gold was $35 an ounce back then. Now it's over $2,000 per ounce. So, instead of paying $45,000 for an average car today, you should be paying $800 for the same car. And so young people are seeing this. They can't afford to buy groceries. I mean, with the technological advances, technology pushes prices down about 2 to 3% per year, theoretically. But of course, they print the money, and we don't see that. It's just another, theft operation by government. It's counterfeiting. It's illegal if you or I counterfeit money. So what's happening is their purchasing power is being stolen. Now, for somebody like, say, in my position or your position, let's say we're in the top 5% or something, we can afford to buy assets that tend to appreciate in value, whether it's real estate or the S&P 500, or now Bitcoin. But the average person out there who's on a hourly pay or a fixed wage, they're getting killed by inflation. They're getting killed by the money printing press, because, as we know, and I think as you know, Marty, the CPI, the inflation number that is being released by government every month, is a completely phony number. It's at least it understates inflation by there's a debate about this, but it understates it by 4 to 7%, say. So if the CPI, Consumer Price Index, that's the official inflation number that's released by the government every month, if they're telling you it's 3%, well, it's really more like 7% inflation. And the way you know that is by looking at the price of gold and the price of by looking at the price of gold against the dollar. That's how you know that the CPI is the official government inflation number is phony. And of course, Bitcoin, is a big improvement over gold because it's transportable. You can't carry your gold bar with you very easily. It would be hard to carry a gold bar through an airport or across border in case all hell breaks loose here and you have to get out with your assets. And Bitcoin allows you to carry your wealth in your pocket. So that's a huge improvement.
You can carry it in your brain if you want to, if you can
You carry in your brain
memorize
if
some
you
words.
remember a 12 words. Yeah, yeah. Oh, but the gold thing, it's kind of funny, Marty, that my wife, she escaped from communism when she was 13. She's Laotian, and she managed to get across the Mekong River. And her mom was instrumental in kind of planning the escape from the family when the communists took over, I guess, in 1975. And this is like a killing fields type story. And so she and her mom and other siblings managed to get across, taking different routes through the jungle and so forth. And she got across she and her mom got separated. Wanda at that point was 13, but her mom had sewed gold into the fabric of her clothing so that if they get separated, that she would have a way to potentially buy her way across the border or buy her way to, if across the Mekong River was Thailand. And so Wanda's very biased to gold, So she says, "Why are you buying Bitcoin? Buy gold." So yeah, so she wasn't. But now of course that Bitcoin's at 63,000, and she's happy about that. But yeah, she was definitely for gold. She was not sold on Bitcoin at all. But because gold literally saved her life when her mom sewed the gold into the fibers of her clothing, and she's able to get out. And this is kind of interesting too. She made her way 5 days walking by herself in the jungle, found her way to a refugee camp in Thailand, and stayed there with her family. Actually, was there also, got there, found their way there because the refugee camp, they all knew where it was, sort of generally, and they stayed there for 18 months, and she got over here, and then her mom died shortly after she got here, and didn't die, but got a stroke and became an invalid and couldn't speak anymore, and then died later. But so basically, Wanda had to raise herself in this country at age 14, I guess, by the time 14 or 15, by the time she got here, and she was just plopped in the school, and she didn't know the language at all, and she had to navigate school. There was no such thing as a Laotian to English dictionary, so she had to use a Thai to English dictionary, and she ended up getting a B average in school, and she went to community college, and she learned some skills there, learned some desktop publishing skills, and she got hired by Geico to lay out the newsletter and to do some data entry. And then she took a course at the community college on how to be a legal secretary, and Geico moved her into her legal department, and she was employee of the month for the whole corporation 5 times, so that, because she just never missed work, no matter how. And so she would look at these wokesters, these people complaining about how tough it is to be an American. Oh, and then she also was on the side. Her side hustle was to buy rental properties, little units, and she would rent them out. And so she literally was getting sort of rich doing rental properties. And here's this person that came over, not even knowing the language, escaped communism, got across the Mekong River. Came here. When she arrived, she had one dress and a pair of sandals when she arrived in San Francisco. And then she ended up in Maryland and blah, blah, blah. But, the point is that she just thinks that these people who are complaining about life in America and how tough it is, and they try to claim some sort of victim status. I mean, when you look at her life, I mean, it's a story. Her story is a story right out of Killing Fields, if you've seen the movie.
Yeah. It's insane. And it's insane. I think it's, well, the whole concept of victimhood, it's really corrosive to society, and it's really... Mm-hmm. It's racist, it's sexist, it's prejudice. It's really telling people like, hey, you don't have any ability yourself to actually pull yourself up from your bootstraps. You are being subjugated by somebody. Yeah. Wanda's story is a complete...
it's just incredible.
Complete,
story.
It's
a complete refutation.
Says, this is not true at all. Yeah. But it's seeped into our society, and I'm really interested to get your perspective on this, because you've been in the advertising industry. Advertising is really around messaging and connecting with people. That's the one thing the Weather Underground and the whole Long March, the whole movement behind this Long March have done really well, is like the messaging. They really know how to use victimhood and language around victimhood to really push at people's reptilian instincts to react to fear or the feeling of being oppressed. And that's what I wonder moving forward, is we can... Like, how can we use messaging to poke at other reptilian
Yeah.
sort of reactions to language that paint a more optimistic and abundant future.
Well, the victim thing, it is a human instinct. Let's say if you're not being successful, it's human nature to want to blame some outside force for that, right? So that's they're sort of tapping into a natural human tendency to say, okay, the reason I'm not successful is, slavery, 150, 200 years ago. So that's the reason. But if you look at black people who immigrate from Africa to here, they're doing extremely well. Most of them are Republican, and they're building businesses, and they basically come from a Wanda type situation where they had nothing in Africa. They come over here and they're successful. So, this, and then of course they'll say that the left will say, well, that's not what we mean by institutional racism. So it's not about the results. It's racism is about discriminating against people because of their skin color. And when you point out that people from Africa or even people from the Bahamas, who come over here and they build businesses and they're very successful, and they're not steeped in this woke ideology at all.
Yeah. And it's
that's why I say, sometimes I think the conservatives, obviously we want a secure border. I'm for lots more immigration. I just want to want to screen out the cartels and the criminals and the bad people. But basically, if you take a look at the people who are getting here from Venezuela and Central America and places that have complete collapsed economies, they're voting 78, 80% Republican. So it's the people who, the people from Mexico, because they're right on the border, it's easier for them to get in, and the Puerto Ricans tend to be more Democrat. But the people who are coming from Central America, they are conservative, they are pro-family, they are pro-entrepreneurship, they love America, they're happy to be here. So if we screen out the criminals and bring in the people who are going to be productive, America would be good. We need actually more people. Elon Musk has talked about this, the birth dearth, that basically we're not even at replacement level for our native population here. It's like, I think replacement level is 2 point something babies per couple, and but we're down to like 1.6, so we're basically disappearing without an increase in population. So we do need immigration, but it just needs to be the right people. We need to control our border. So
yeah, I had this conversation last week with Matthew Mizinchus, which is the whole border situation, the fact that it's just been left wide open for years and millions of people have been able to stream in. It's really muddied the water around the conversation of immigration. Like, there's obviously a clear distinction between illegal and legal immigration. Of course, we want to have a robust legal immigration system where we can...
Lots of legal immigration. I'm all for it, especially like from India, more computer engineers and, absolutely.
Yeah, and then going back to like the birth rate problem that we have with the incumbent population, the native population here in the United States, like I think this is a combination of the money problem and the woke ideology. And the money, it's very hard for...
The money's very important, so people, Marty, somebody needs to really maybe do a book on this, is when you corrupt the money, you kind of corrupt the morals, you corrupt the work ethic, you corrupt a lot of things that, inflation. People say, for example, they say, well, we need a little bit of inflation. We need a little bit of money printing to kind of grease the skids of the economy to create more velocity of the money so that people just won't want to hoard their money. But I think that's wrong. I mean, let's say we have a money that is just really rock solid, and maybe it's going up in value against fiat currency. But are you really not going to buy an iPhone if you need an iPhone because you don't want to spend your Bitcoin or spend your gold coins? Of course not. You're going to buy the iPhone. And if you look at the 19th century, we were on the gold standard. For most of the 19th century, we went fiat money printing to pay down Civil War debts and to pay down Revolutionary War debts. But for much of the 19th century, the boom times of the 19th century, we were actually on the gold standard. Paper dollars were gold certificates. You could go to a bank and cash them in for actual gold coins, and it was a death penalty offense in those days. And by the way, we had no central bank in those days, and the banks issued they had to have reserves, gold reserves, and they'd issue their gold certificates. And so you'd get a certificate from like the Bank of Kansas City or the Bank of New York or whatever, and you could redeem these certificates for gold. And if anybody was caught counterfeiting, printing up fake gold certificates, it was a death penalty offense. counterfeiting was a death penalty offense. That's how serious it was. And and there were some problems with the whole free banking system, but that was a boom. I mean, no one can argue that the 19th century wasn't a tremendous economic explosion going on in America. Alexis de Tocqueville came over here in, I guess, 1830, and to chronicle America's just stunning economic success, wrote Democracy in America. Because he wanted to find out what was going on here. What was making America so successful? Well, what was making America so successful was freedom. People were free. And banks could issue their currencies, their gold certificates. It had to be backed by actual gold. Otherwise, that would be fraud and death penalty offense. So, So, no, I don't think we need to have inflation to have a robust economy.
No, it's insane. It's insane. Going back to language. It's doublespeak. Like the Fed's dual mandate is 1, full employment, and 2, price stability. And they achieve price stability by targeting a 2% inflation rate. So they literally have double speak. Yeah. They have double speak in their mandate, which is like price stability, but we're going to target prices going up.
And even if they do achieve the 2 to 3%, let's say true inflation, true money printing, they're still stealing the 2 to 3% of what technological progress allows everything to get cheaper, because farming gets cheaper, because farming is much more efficient today than it was like 30 years ago. They've got robotic tractors and AI, and it's just mass farming. But so a grocery should be getting cheaper, but they keep getting more expensive, because not only is the fiat money printing, not only is the official inflation rate a phony number by 4 to 6 to 7%, not only is that phony, but you also have that extra 2 to 3% price decline that should be happening because of technological progress.
Yeah. And it's like and the government, what I'm most passionate about these days is the energy sector, because I think energy alongside money, these are the 2 most important tools that we leverage every day. We cannot do this podcast right now without energy. Right. I have a bunch of lights. I can see you have lights behind you. We're using the internet, and people take for granted. And again, I hope this is going back to education. This is one thing that I think, don't send your kids to the school, but you should have like a curriculum. If you do send them to school, make sure that they're teaching kids about finance, money, and energy systems. And what we're doing here in the United States to completely degrade the reliability of our energy systems with this woke movement towards net zero carbon emissions is completely asinine. If these people, these zealots, are successful in quote unquote transitioning us to a green energy grid, they're going to kill more people than the climate ever could.
Well, I can refute the climate crisis hoax, what I call it, with just one fact. Okay, today, the atmosphere, CO2 in the atmosphere is about 200 parts per million, 220 parts per million. In the age of the dinosaurs, it was over 2,000 parts per million. So literally 5 times more CO2 in the atmosphere was present during the age of the dinosaurs because of all the volcanic activity. We have less volcanic activity today because I guess the Earth's core is cooling slightly. Plus there's cycles with the sun and the orbit and all this stuff. But they had literally 5 times more. There was 5 times more CO2 in the atmosphere during the age of the dinosaurs than there is today. And there was plenty of life on the planet during the age of the dinosaurs, a little too much life actually. But so I don't think, in fact, plants need a minimum level of CO2 in the atmosphere to survive. And I believe it's 150 parts per million or something like that. It's right around there. So if CO2 in the atmosphere dips below that, all plant life dies, right? So then we die, right? And we're actually pretty close to that. We're at like 220 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. So we actually need more CO2 in the atmosphere.
I'm a CO2 maximalist myself. Again, language, CO2 pollution, emissions.
That's what they're doing. They're conflating pollution and language. Of course, we want clean water and clean air, but CO2 has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, that's another beauty of the Bitcoin network, particularly Bitcoin mining, is it affords us this ability to be as efficient as possible. Like I think I like to consider myself an environmentalist. I'm a surfer. I go to the beach. I like to clean up the beach. I don't like dirty beaches. I will clean up the trash and make sure I leave the beach as good, or if not better, than when I got there. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. They conflate, like, if you don't believe in this climate hysteria, you're anti-environment. It's like, no, that's not true.
No,
Bitcoin mining provides us the opportunity to, like, there's literally an ironclad argument. It's like, no, We're humans. There's 8 billion people on the planet. We all need energy if we want to flourish. We're going to create more energy, but while doing that, we'll be as efficient as possible by soaking up all the excess natural gas on upstream oil and gas fields and stranded wells and all the excess electricity capacity on grids with Bitcoin mining.
Exactly. So excess on the grids, but also the Bitcoin mining incentivizes the dispersal of people to where they can get free energy, very cheap energy, free energy. So you get solar power, as the mining, as the source of the energy for the Bitcoin mining, because that's free. Or they're at the bottom of a glacier or some kind of stream and they're mining it that way. So what Bitcoin actually incentivizes is the dispersal of the population. We really no longer need to be in these densely populated population centers, because people can now just spread out. They can have a Bitcoin mining operation and they can provide their own electricity, and they're not putting pressure on the grid. And as you say, Bitcoin miners are using excess power from the grid that would otherwise be wasted, because the power companies have to produce more electricity than they'll actually use in order to ensure against blackouts and brownouts. So yeah, but basically I think it incentivizes further decentralization. That's what I love about, another thing I love about Bitcoin is it incentivizes the spreading out of people. We don't have to live in these population centers. And I say that Bitcoin is an extension of the American idea, and the brilliance of America is that it's decentralized government. Now it's much more centralized now, but really America was mostly, 98% of the governing was happening at the state and local level in America until basically World War II. World War One, well, Civil War, kind of central. Whenever you have a war, everything centralizes, right? So, but through the 19th century, it was very decentralized, and nobody really had a kind of identity of being an American. They were more loyal to their local community, and that's where the governing was happening. But Thomas Jefferson said the big regret he had about the Constitution is it didn't really address the money problem. Yes, there is a in the Constitution. It says that, I think it's Article 1, Section 10 says, all debts can be satisfied with gold or silver coins. So really, in the Constitution, we are on the gold standard. But there was a lot of corruption in the banking system, even in the 19th century. And Jefferson said his biggest regret was not really the Constitution did not really fix the money, did not really fix the money could still be dishonest, with the but Jefferson is interesting, though. Jefferson was very aware of that. And of course, there was a big debate between Jefferson and Hamilton. Hamilton wanted more centralized power, including centralization over the economy. I love Hamilton in many ways, but I think, there's some problems there. He actually created the first national bank, but then that got disbanded later. So he created the national bank. Basically, they had to pay off the Civil War debt. I mean, that's the debts from the American Revolution. So, that created centralization. It created government control over the money. But Jefferson saw a big problem with that. And, I think Jefferson is right. I mean, yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Well, not only Jefferson, but that's hilarious. It's hilarious to think back throughout history. We've been warned. I believe it was Aristotle or Socrates who said, don't mess up the money. Money's very important. Mm-hmm. Then in the Bible, Jesus said,
don't honest mess up and weights and measures in the Bible,
yes. Right? Then you have Thomas Jefferson and others saying, don't mess up the money. And we've had to learn this lesson time and time again throughout history.
Well, the government, it goes all the way back to the Roman Empire and every empire that's ever existed, right? So the Roman Empire, it was the currency was based on gold and silver and I think copper. But, because they had to fund the expansion of the empire and their military machine, and you can only mine so much gold and copper, they had to dilute the gold and the copper and the silver. And so the soldiers are getting, this is toward the end of the Roman Empire, the soldiers are getting paid in these basically very diluted coins. They started diluting the coins, and the soldiers could rub the finish off the coin, and they see that, wait a second, this is not a silver coin. And so then a lot of the Roman Empire soldiers defected over to the barbarians, to the people who are coming in. So the corruption of the money was a big part of the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and we see similar things happening now. I'm not sure if you've seen this TikTok trend, but there's literally active duty American military members like on duty in other parts of the world, and they're on TikTok sending videos like, don't join the army, the pay's not worth it, inflation's too high, I can't even afford my
All right.
life. It's
Well, actually, yeah.
it's very
Wanda's.
similar.
So I have four kids, but also have two kids on Wanda's side from her previous marriage, and one of her sons did one tour in Iraq and two tours in Afghanistan. So he unfortunately has PTSD. So he's sacrificed a lot for the country. But yeah, he I wish he had not gone in the military. I mean, Wanda was crying when he signed up, but he went to Citadel. She didn't want him to go to Citadel,
In
but
South
he did.
Carolina.
Yeah, in South Carolina,
Mhm.
and he did, and then he went to Iraq, and she's very upset about it.
Yeah. No, it's great. And that's the
And and how we
we're
treat the
such
veterans is so awful. How we treat the
yeah.
veterans are just discarded, and nothing real. And they do get some, the VA, but it's a bad healthcare system, and they get nothing basically.
And the saddest thing is most military members, I believe that they believe that they're truly fighting to protect our freedoms at the end of
Oh,
the
they
day. But
absolutely do. They
the
absolutely do.
the blob, as Mike Benz calls it, has gotten so big and so corrupt that in reality today, if you're in the military, you're really fighting on behalf of the whims of the deep state, the
Oh
intelligence
yeah.
agencies, and what they
Well, we
want to
saw
do
that.
in terms of control
Yep.
all over the
We
world.
we saw that with the Russia hoax, which is totally a CIA, NSA, FBI operation, against Trump, and then but then the COVID thing, I think the pandemic opened people's eyes a lot because that turned out to be mostly a hoax, in terms of its deadliness and so forth, and they shut down the economy. And I do think that that was a trial run to see, what ridiculous things can we force the population to do? Can we persuade the population to do? And unfortunately, they can persuade them to do a lot, unfortunately. But yeah, so then and that even opened my eyes. I mean, I was somewhat up to speed on that, but I started to really appreciate that big pharma and government are basically in partnership together, right? And now we have this military-industrial complex that the Eisenhower warned about. He said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex coming out of World War II." And I never really fully appreciated that until recently. More recently, I was aware of it, but it wasn't a prime concern. But the more I think about it, especially with the Iraq War, that George W. Bush launched, by mistake, was that and I don't think he did that on purpose. I think he just was told this by the CIA, by the deep state, and of course the entire business model of the weapons manufacturers, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, you know, their profit depends on a war going on, so they can make more weapons, and so there is a big profit motive to keep these wars going. And if a war ends, you got to find another war to have. And we have like 800 military bases around the world. I think China has like two or something, So so it's really insane just to like how big our military is, and I didn't fully appreciate that until sort of recently, and the COVID thing woke me up a little bit. I mean, I was vaguely aware of it. I was focused on other things, the attack on free speech, freedom of thought, that kind of thing. But boy, this military industrial complex, the politicians are bought by these companies, these giant corporations, whether it's Boeing, Lockheed Martin, so on. In both parties, it's not just Democrats. It's not just, it's both parties are just totally bought. And so that's where we're going to have perpetual war. And that's another reason for Bitcoin, and I think Max Kaiser talks about this a lot, that fiat money, money printing by government is what finances war. And if you cut that off, you're going to have a lot less war. I mean, people are not going to spend their gold to finance war if they don't absolutely have to, right? They're good. But if they can just print up money and kind of steal it little by little from everybody else, makes it a lot easier to finance a war. That's how the Romans financed it. They got off the gold standard. They got off stopped producing real gold, real silver, real copper coins, and just made diluted coins. So the tendency of government is always to print the money, so they can conquer more territory, and so on. So
Yeah, and as a 32-year-old who was 10 when 9/11 happened, watched all of the Iraq and Afghanistan war unfold through my teenage years, and had the 2008 financial crisis happening during that. And shortly after that, you get the WikiLeaks dumps, which Julian Assange is being essentially murdered for in
so
prison.
horrible. Yeah, he is being literally murdered. Yes.
Yeah. and Edward
Absolutely.
Snowden, and
Edward
then
Snowden.
Syria, and now Ukraine, Russia. We're saber rattling around Taiwan. It's just exhausting. It's literally been
exhausting.
2/3 of
Yeah, I
my
was really
life.
disappointed when Donald Trump did not pardon Assange and Snowden, and I think he will next if he's reelected. I think he will, and I was really glad to hear Trump saying sort of good things about Bitcoin because he used to really trash Bitcoin as it's a vehicle for money launderers and criminals, and now it seems like he says, well, a lot of people like Bitcoin. I see no reason why people shouldn't be able to buy it if they want to. I'm for the dollar, meaning him. I'm for the dollar, and I think we should have a strong dollar. But if people want to buy Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, do it.
Yeah, I said a lot of people are doing it.
A lot of people, yeah, I can't do the Trump thing. A lot of people doing it. Yeah.
A lot of I like the dollar, but a lot of people are doing Bitcoin. I hear more people are accepting it.
Yeah.
No, that's certainly a massive shift in his messaging toward Bitcoin. I mean, when he was president,
Yeah.
Steve Mnuchin was his Treasury Secretary. He was like, no, this is terrible. We need the dollar to be strong. This is a step in the right direction, still leaning on the dollar. But I think more importantly, that town hall meeting, was that with Laura Ingraham too?
Yeah, because I guess Laura's interested in it. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, Dinesh, I just was on a podcast with Dinesh D'Souza. So it sounds like, my Dartmouth little mafia there is waking up to Bitcoin a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that was the beauty of the question. It was the fact that the question was asked in the first place leading up to a massive presidential election. It's not Trump's response, while it was good and better than it has been in the past. The fact that he is forced and others will be forced to ask questions about Bitcoin is just great mimetic.
I mean, you do have
energy.
to study Bitcoin, and of course he hasn't studied it. And, I always say, you really have to put about 100 hours of study. I think Michael Saylor says that you have to put 100 hours of study into it. And the reason I wrote my book on Bitcoin in part was I just really wanted to study it, make sure I understand it. And there's no really better way to study something than to have to teach it, right? You have to, or to write a book about it, because you begin to see a lot of holes in your thinking or lack of understanding if you haven't kind of really done the study on it. And because Bitcoin, I tell people, I don't like to tell people what to buy, no, not investment advice, right? I don't give investment advice, because you do get these 75% drops, and if you buy at $60 and it crashes to $16, it's going to be it's going to shake you up if you don't really understand the asset. Now, when Bitcoin dropped to 15,000 or 16,000, and I think it was November of 2022, I wasn't bothered at all, but because I understood the asset. I understood that it was a mathematical certainty that when you have a scarce asset, 21 million Bitcoins, there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoins for 8 billion people. Mathematically, and because Bitcoin now has a huge network, I don't know, 400 million users or something. I don't know what the number is, but it's something like that. Willy Woo probably, I think he tracks this pretty carefully. The network is so big now that Bitcoin can't be killed. We found that in China when China tried to outlaw Bitcoin in 2021 and couldn't do it. So the network is big enough that it can't be killed at this point, and so it'll just keep going up. It'll have these price drops, and it'll be very volatile as people try to understand it, as any emerging technology is. You had the dot-com bubble, the tech bubble in 2000, where the NASDAQ dropped like 80% because people are trying to figure out this internet thing. What is this internet thing all about? So that's happening with Bitcoin now. And I think it'll stabilize more as we move forward. We have these 11 new ETFs, so Wall Street is now in the game, and I think that's going to stabilize Bitcoin's price a lot.
Yeah, not only stabilize it, but for the masses who don't think critically and look for an authority figure to tell them what to do, having a BlackRock or Fidelity, whether or not. I think that's the best way to hold Bitcoin is irrelevant to the fact that people are going to be more receptive to Bitcoin just because these institutions are selling it.
Exactly. It's kind of the rubber stamp. It's the good seal, good housekeeping seal of approval. The SEC's kind of approved it, though Gensler came out and said but that's okay. SEC approved it. It's kind of okay, I guess it's okay now. But, and I tell people, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin, if you're a beginner, is just buy one of the ETFs, because at least if you do that, that will protect you from the fiat money printer, right? It'll protect you from that. You won't be able to carry your wealth with you if all hell breaks loose. You won't be, it's still seizable, it's still confiscatable, because if you get in a civil lawsuit, you're going to want Bitcoin on your private keys. You're going to want to be your own bank. You're going to want unconfiscatable money. Donald Trump right now just got a $450 million judgment against him by some maniac Manhattan judge. he probably wishes he had a lot of that in Bitcoin right now. And that might, so if you have the ETF, it's not unconfiscatable money, but it will protect you from the fiat money printer.
Yes. And I think there's a culmination of events happening at this period of time, which is really interesting. Obviously the ETFs, inflation is still high. You have confidence in institutions at all-time lows.
Low. Yeah.
People are fed up with what's going on at the federal government level. You have people in Iowa clamoring to secure the border. They're 1,000 miles away.
Isn't that amazing that, people in the interior of the country is like, wait a second, what's going on, with this border thing?
So I think this culmination of events, right now we're at 63,000. We're less than 10% below the previous all-time high, leading up to a halving event, which historically we've been 40 to 60% below the all-time high, heading into the halving. It's
with Wall Street behind it.
Yeah, it's just a very unique environment where you have the capital coming in, and then on the social side, I think people are more receptive than ever to ideas outside of what's being fed to them by the government.
Yeah, what do you think, Marty, about BlackRock? Of course, is kind of a boogeyman to pro-freedom people. What do you think about this? Do you think BlackRock wants to just take over Bitcoin, co-opt it? Probably does, but or will they be able to? I don't think they'll be able to. But
if China can, I don't think BlackRock will be able to. But,
I don't think so. But yeah,
I don't know. I think that they may certainly have those intentions. I don't think they'll be able to do anything at the end of the day, because yes, these ETFs are accumulating a large supply, but at the end of the day, the people buying these ETFs are RIAs, hedge funds, individual investors. And so to think people are like, oh, they're going to get all this Bitcoin and then dump it right away. It's like, well, they actually don't have the power to make those decisions unilaterally.
No, they just take the order and people buy it. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I think that's right. And the other thing too is the distinction I really want to make to everybody I talk to about Bitcoin is it's Bitcoin, not crypto. Bitcoin is the only successful, truly decentralized money, meaning that it's the only asset that there are some other decentralization attempts, but Bitcoin has actually achieved true decentralization, which can never be achieved in this space again, because Bitcoin was the first, and so when the technology is first, it's really hard to overcome that, especially once it develops this network effect, the 400 million users. And so it's kind of like Facebook. Yeah, I could copy Facebook, but I don't have the 3 billion users. The network what makes Facebook valuable is the network of 3 billion users. So, and that's what makes Bitcoin really. It can't be replicated. I call it the immaculate inception, not the immaculate conception. The circumstances around Bitcoin's founding or start can't be replicated. And so you have these 30,000 other crypto assets that are out there, but they're all centralized projects. They're all owned or controlled by someone or some small group. They're basically unregistered securities, and they're just trying to surf on the wake of Bitcoin's success. So I try to tell people, okay, no, you're not too late to be in Bitcoin. And so a lot of people buy these other crypto. I think almost all of them are scams. They buy them because they think they're too late. They're too late for Bitcoin, so they have to get on the thing that's just starting, And of course, they get wrecked, because when Bitcoin gets a cold, they get pneumonia, they die, and so that's so I just try to steer people away from these other crypto assets. And Ethereum is number 2, of course. They're about a third the size of Bitcoin in terms of market cap, but they are a centralized. They're trying to be a decentralized internet or something. They keep changing the narrative what they want to be, but they are controlled by a couple of people, Vitalik Buterin and Joe Lubin. I mean, Vitalik can reverse transactions anytime he wants. He's done it before. They constantly change the number of coins that are out there. It's not really trying to be money. It's trying to be a decentralized internet, which I don't think works very well on a blockchain because it's too slow and clunky. But it's a centralized. Number 2 is centralized. That's Ethereum. Now you have a Solana, which some people say is better and faster than Ethereum, but it's also centralized. It's also owned and run by some people, and all these, and everything else is tiny. Everything else is tiny. And Bitcoin is just the idea that I don't think anything else can possibly come along. And of course, Bitcoin right now is 95% of the market in terms of trying to be honest money. decentralized honest money. There's a few others like Litecoin, Monero, and a few others, but Dogecoin, which only pumped up a little bit because Elon liked it. It's interesting about Elon. I think he was responding to Kathy Wood the other day. Kathy Wood noted that more compute power is being used by the Bitcoin network, to secure the network than the combined cloud compute power of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. So and that's one pillar of Bitcoin security structure. That's just one pillar. That then there's the cryptography and everything else. And Elon was very surprised by that. He said, "Wow, I did not know that," and which tells me that when he kind of endorsed Dogecoin more as a joke, I think, because he liked the fact that it started as a joke. It basically a copy and paste of Bitcoin, and he didn't really understand that. Yeah, no, Bitcoin is really something. I memean, in terms of the compute power, in terms of the asset, he hadn't really studied it. You could tell. And and Tesla still owns a lot of Bitcoin. I don't know how much they bought a bunch, and I think they own 10,000 coins or something like that. So he still likes it. He likes Bitcoin, but he didn't really fully understand it and hadn't studied it. And so he pumped Doge instead. Now Doge, I think, has just kind of collapsed, I guess. But anybody can cut and paste the Bitcoin code. It's open source, right? So anybody can cut and paste and make a few tweaks and try to improve it. It's open source. But what makes Bitcoin valuable is the network. It's the network of users, and that's what's really hard to replicate. And also, as an advertising person, someone in advertising, there are a few assets that are more valuable than a brand. One of the most valuable brands, of course, is Coca-Cola. Another one, McDonald's. If you tried to start, there's room for two cola drinks, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And Pepsi's like way behind Coca-Cola. And then you have like RC Cola, number three. And then if you tried to start a competitor, you just wouldn't be able to do it because of the brand. And Bitcoin has a very strong brand. Most people could not name any other crypto besides Bitcoin. So that's another, valuable asset, frankly, that Bitcoin has.
Yeah, the brand is pervasive at this point.
Yep.
It's global. It's recognizable. It's not going away.
No.
I think too, like another event happening right now is the maturation of the stack being built on top of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's protocol level, you have Lightning, you have things like Fedimints coming to market, Liquid, other second layer solutions. And I mean, I see we're sending this podcast out over RSS. I have a Lightning, I have a Bitcoin address in my RSS feed, and they're going to listen to us talk, and they're going to send us Bitcoin over the Lightning network.
I'd like to learn how to do that. You're more technologically advanced than I am. I'm really not a techie. I'm more of I was an English major in college.
Yeah. It's very easy. You go down, if you have a podcast, you download the Fountain app, you claim your podcast in the Fountain app, and boom, you put your address in there. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And then what now? You can just then send it out to like YouTube and so forth?
Not via RSS, but when we send it via RSS, it goes to Apple, Spotify, all the podcasting platforms.
Okay.
And then
will it go to YouTube? It'll go up on YouTube?
Yes.
So all the platforms basically, and then X and so forth.
Yes.
So that's great. All right. Wow.
Yeah. We're trying to get the message out there, and I appreciate you joining us.
Well, I think that I do think I don't look too much. I mean, obviously everybody looks at the price, but that's not. And obviously the price has to go up for it to be adopted, right? So we want the price to go up. But I'm really attracted. When my son first talked about Bitcoin when he was, I guess, maybe 16 or something, and talked to me about it, it was just very interesting intellectually. Just fascinating. And then the only question was, would it work? And it worked.
It's still working.
It's like this. 62. It's like a snowball. It's like this snowball that just it gets bigger. It starts off small. It's like this, and then it's like, it's great.
Yeah, there's no stopping this show. I was tweeting it or talking with somebody about this yesterday. Where now we have BlackRock, Fidelity, all these ETFs out there, institutional stamp of approval. I would not be surprised if in the back half of this year, it goes further up the stack and you have more sovereign nations join the ranks of El Salvador and others that have embraced Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. And I would think, that the Saudis, of course, the sovereign wealth funds, I'm sure they'll buy, they'll get into it. I mean, people go where the money is, right? And that's part of the brilliance of Bitcoin, that it was started by people who were steeped in Austrian economics, Austrian free market economics, Friedrich Hayek, Ludwig von Mises. They really, and of course, Ayn Rand also with Atlas Shrugged and her books. And they understood the profit motive and that people are motivated by money. And so the brilliance. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes, right, with Bitcoin going down. You could go down the political rabbit hole, the economics rabbit hole, the technology rabbit hole, but the structure of it, where it really incentivizes all the right things. So the miners are the guardians of the network. They process the transactions and mine and and they're rewarded for that by winning the race to mine the next block. And so they don't want to do anything screwy with the network because that would wreck their own Bitcoin. So everybody's incentivized to protect the network. And I think Michael Saylor said it best. I don't have the quote exactly, but he said Bitcoin is like a growing nest of cyber hornets. That the bigger it gets, the more secure it gets, the more difficult it becomes to attack. So when the network was small, yeah, the government could have taken it out if it understood what was going on. But I think it can't right now, and because so many people hold Bitcoin worldwide, but also in the United States, maybe there's 40 million, 50 million people who hold some Bitcoin. It becomes politically impossible for these politicians to really go after it. And Elizabeth Warren, who's been a big denigrator of Bitcoin, it seems like she has changed her tune recently, because now she's making the distinction between Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies, and she's saying, well, maybe there is something to Bitcoin, so I'm really not talking about that. I'm more talking about the exchanges and some of these other sketchy crypto assets. And okay, good,
Yeah, and she's got somebody who's trying to primary right now, running on
on that. Yeah, maybe her staff, say, hey, we own Bitcoin, and here's why. Maybe that could be happening.
Yeah, I hope she gets primaried out. She's pretty annoying.
Oh, she is very annoying. Yeah,
and a shameless politician.
Right? Yeah, but I'm happy to have anybody on board. And in some ways, I don't like to politicize Bitcoin, because there are a lot of liberals, who are pro-civil liberties, who are for Bitcoin. Like, Jack Dorsey is a left-leaning libertarian, right? And I think one of the reasons he left Twitter is because he didn't like the totalitarian direction. He didn't really have control over the company. Probably didn't, and I'm just guessing, I'm kind of mind reading here, but I'm just kind of reading the tea leaves. I think he left because it was becoming this totalitarian woke thing, and he wanted to go off and do Bitcoin and make Bitcoin available to the people in Africa and the third world, and the people who don't have access to banking and the U.S. dollar. And so he's motivated more by his liberal concerns, but I think he's a civil libertarian. And we want those people on board. We really want anybody on board, because I think, Max Kaiser always says, you don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you. The more people who get involved in Bitcoin, they start learning about economics. They start learning about freedom. They start learning about, so
energy.
Anybody who they start learning about energy.
If you were to tell me 8 years ago that I would know as much about energy as I do today, I would have been like, wow, what the hell happened?
So I love that what he says, you don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you. So the more people can get involved in Bitcoin, even at a small level, I think it just changes people.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's changed me, certainly, over the last 11 years.
I learned a lot about issues I didn't really know about just getting involved in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Well, I've learned a lot from this conversation. This was an incredibly fun conversation. I really appreciate you joining me on such short notice.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I do have one request. I'm a huge fan of Whitney Webb. And I know that you had her on several times. I would love to have her on a podcast, or just because I've read her book, One Nation Under Blackmail. I just think she's awesome. And I understand she comes actually kind of from the left, but, she's against this, which I think is awesome. So I just like to, talk to her and maybe have her on a podcast if she'd love to do it, because I'm like her biggest fan.
I'll hit her up. I'll ask her. She goes on a lot of podcasts, so I wouldn't be surprised if you two end up talking.
And I'm sort of small, I'm just kind of getting. I had no desire to be involved in social media. I have my business and advertising agency. I sort of got plopped into it a couple of weeks ago, or last week, and said, "Oh, okay, I got people watching. Let's teach them about Bitcoin and some of these subjects."
And when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. Seems
Absolutely.
like you're doing just that.
So,
thank you for joining us. This was fascinating. We'll have to do it again
Marty.
At some point.
Great to be on.
All right. That's all we got today, freaks. Peace and love.